Hi everyone, in this video we are going to learn about Chapter 6, Photosynthesis. So there is two subtopics under this video. 6.1 Overview of Photosynthesis, outline the complete process of photosynthesis, light-dependent and light-independent reactions. 6.2 Absorption Spectrum of Photosynthetic Pigments, where we are going to state the photosynthesis pigments that involve in photosynthesis. So what will you learn in this chapter? This chapter actually consists of 5 subtopics. So 6.1 Overview of Photosynthesis, we are going to outline the process of photosynthesis. 6.2 Absorption Spectrum of Photosynthesis Pigment, where we are going to learn about photosynthetic pigments. 6.3, 6.4 and 6.5, we are going to learn under tutorial. So as an introduction, life on Earth is solar powered, okay, which means use the sunlight as the ultimate source of energy. So chloroplasts of the plants use a process called photosynthesis to capture the light energy from the sun and convert it to chemical energy stored in the sugars and other organic molecules. So recall the chapter 2, you learn about the process of the food chain, okay, the concept of food chain, that you know that the plant is the producer. So producer, they can convert light energy into chemical energy and can be used by other organisms. So now we are going to learn the detailed process of photosynthesis here. So as an overall process of photosynthesis, photosynthesis use carbon dioxide and water as the substrate, and sunlight provide the energy to convert into glucose and oxygen. So this sunlight is going to absorb by the chlorophyll pigment. Chlorophyll pigment can be found in the chloroplasts, a kind of organelle which can be found in the plant cell. So the main site where the photosynthesis occurs is on the leaf, because leaf consists of the chloroplasts. So leaves are the major site of the photosynthesis. It's about 500,000 chloroplasts per square millimeter of the leaf surface. So there are plenty of the chloroplasts can be found in the leaf. So the color of the leaf comes from the chlorophyll pigment. It's a kind of green pigment found in the chloroplast organelle. So it plays a very important role in the absorption of light energy during the process of photosynthesis. So without the chlorophyll, they cannot absorb the sunlight, so the process of photosynthesis would not occur. So chloroplasts are found mainly in the mesophyll cell. Okay? Oxygen exits and the carbon dioxide enter through the microscopic pores called stomata. So stomata is a pores that can be found on the surface of the leaf. The veins of the leaf will deliver the water from the roots and carry off the sugar from the mesophyll cells to other plant areas. Without the water, the process of photosynthesis also will not occur. So a typical mesophyll cell has 30 to 40 chloroplasts, each about 2 to 4 microns by 4 to 7 microns long. Each chloroplast has 2 membranes around a central aqueous space called the stroma. So it is like similar to our mitochondria, which also has 2 layers of membranes. Okay, so this is the leaf, okay, the vein which carry the water into the mesophyll cell. So inside the mesophyll cell, there are many chloroplasts. So the structure of the chloroplast, you can see in this diagram. Okay. So inside the stroma, there are membranous sacs called thylakoids. These have an internal aqueous space in the thylakoid lumen. Okay, inside there we call it the thylakoid lumen or the thylakoid space. The thylakoid will be stacked up into a column called grana. So looking at the structure of the chloroplast here, okay, we have inner and outer membrane. So 2 layers of membranes, just like our mitochondria. The only difference is the inner membrane of the chloroplast is only smooth, not like the mitochondria has highly folded cristae. Okay. Now each of the membranous sac here is known as thylakoid. Okay, one is called thylakoid. And the space here is called stroma. Stroma is equivalent to the matrix of the mitochondria. When the thylakoids stack up, they become granum. Okay, so one is called thylakoid. When they stack up, they become granum. So when we have many granum in the plural, you call grana. G-R-A-N-A. So what is the process of photosynthesis? It is the light energy converted to chemical energy that is stored in the form of glucose or other organic compounds. So the light energy is from the sun convert into chemical energy. So here refer to the glucose, right? So the equation of photosynthesis, CO2, 6CO2 plus 12 H2O plus 18 ATP plus 12 NADPH with the light energy, okay, by using chlorophyll pigment to absorb the light energy, then it can convert into C6H12O6, which is the glucose, plus oxygen, 6 oxygen, plus 6 water, plus 18 ADP, plus 18 phosphate, plus 12 NADP+. So do you notice that this process is actually a reverse process of cellular respiration? Cellular respiration using the glucose as a substrate, okay, and they produce carbon dioxide and water and ATP. But this one is a reverse process. So cellular respiration is exergonic, photosynthesis is endergonic. So it is powered by light energy. Okay, so the equation of the net process, CO2 plus H2O become C6H12O6 plus oxygen. So oxygen is a product given off by the plants. So oxygen, notice that it comes from water, not coming from the carbon dioxide. Hydrogen extracted from the water is incorporated into sugar and the oxygen is released. So later in the details of cyclic and non-cyclic photophosphorylation in the light-dependent reaction, you will learn about this process called photolysis of water. So photosynthesis is redox reaction. Water is split and the electrons transfer with the hydrogen ion from the water to carbon dioxide, reducing it to sugar. So the light will boost the potential energy of the electrons as they move from water to sugar. So photosynthesis can be further divided into two processes, which is light-dependent reaction, where they depend on the sunlight. So the sunlight is a main thing here which can convert into chemical energy, ATP and NADPH. The other process is known as light-independent reaction, also known as Kelvin Cycle. So in this process, it will incorporate CO2 from the atmosphere into an organic molecule and uses energy from the light-dependent reaction to reduce the new carbon pieces to glucose. Okay, so light-independent reaction, they do not use the sunlight. Okay, but in this process, they will produce the glucose. So, light-dependent reaction, it occurs on the thylakoid membrane. So remember what we have in the thylakoid membrane, there is many chlorophyll pigments. So these chlorophyll pigment, they can absorb the light energy. So light energy will use to break down water into H+ and oxygen to form ATP and NADPH and oxygen as the byproduct to give off. While light-independent reaction, Kelvin cycle, occurs in the stroma of the chloroplast. So they do not absorb sunlight in this step, but they will carbon dioxide that build up into sugar. okay, using the products of the light-dependent reaction. Okay, the product from light-dependent reaction is the ATP and NADPH. Okay, topic 6.2, Absorption Spectrum of Photosynthetic Pigments. So the sunlight is like other electromagnetic energy or electromagnetic radiation which travels in a rhythmic waves. Okay, light travel in the waves. The entire range of electromagnetic radiation is the electromagnetic spectrum. So many of its properties are those of a discrete particles called photon. So you call the light as a photon, as a discrete particles. When the light strikes on an object, its component colors can be reflected, transmitted, or absorbed by an object. So light is made of particles called photons that move in waves. The most important segment for the light is a narrow band between 380 to 750 nanometer. We call it as a visible light. Okay, the others like gamma rays, X-ray, UV ray, okay, this is not important segment for our light. So the energy of it's inversely proportional to the wavelength. Okay, energy inversely proportional to wavelength means when the wavelength is long, the energy is short. Okay, like looking at this diagram here, longer wavelength has lower energy, shorter wavelength has higher energy. So the shorter the wavelength, the greater the energy of each photon of the light. So photosynthetic pigment is a pigment, okay, a molecule which can absorb some wavelength color of the light. Different pigments absorb different light energy at different wavelengths. So the absorption pattern of the pigment is known as the absorption spectrum. So the absorption spectrum indicates the wavelength of the light absorbed by each pigment, example chlorophyll. Each photosynthetic pigment has a set of wavelength that it absorbs called absorption spectrum. Photosynthetic pigments are different in their absorption spectrum. So photosynthetic pigments are the substance that absorb the visible light, okay, which I told you just now, the visible light like the rainbow colors, red, orange, yellow, yellow-green, green, blue, and violet. It's from 400 nanometer to 700 nanometer. So chlorophyll absorbs the light in the red light. Okay, red light, the nanometer is 600 to 700 nanometer, and the blue light is 430 to 500 nanometer, and the green light is about 500 to 575 nanometer, and the violet is about 380 to 430 nanometer. Chlorophyll absorbs the light with a larger peak at the blue region. So you can see in this graph, the blue region. Okay, chlorophyll A has the very high absorption peak and at the smaller peak at the red region. Okay, the red region suggests that the violet, blue, and the red light work the best for photosynthesis. So chlorophyll, they least effective in the green region. So you can see in the green region here, the absorption peak is the lowest. So least effective means it will be reflected. That's the reason why the color of the leaf is green in color, because they reflect, the pigment reflect the color of the wavelengths that they cannot absorb. Okay, so the absorption spectrum of chlorophyll is between 400 to 700 nanometer. The chlorophyll absorbs the light in the red and the blue and the green and the violet. So we have two main groups of photosynthetic pigments. First is known as chlorophyll pigment, which consists of chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. Okay, chlorophyll A is also known as the dominant pigment or the main pigment, which absorbs the best in red and blue wavelength and least in green. Chlorophyll B with a slightly different structure. They have different absorption spectrum and funnels the energy from these wavelengths to chlorophyll A. So another group of pigment are carotenoids. So carotenoids, they absorb the light in the blue-violet range. So we have two main types of carotenoids: carotenes, xanthophyll, phyophytin. So the colors of the pigments are orange, yellow, and gray, just like what you did in your chromatography experiment. So this is the graph showing different pigments have different wavelength of light. So that's all for this video. See you in the next video. Thank you.